It's time to tune in to Defending the Faith with Frank Harber. Hear the latest about religious liberty.
A win for religious freedom in one of the remaining blockbuster cases facing the U.S. Supreme Court this term.
A legal battle continues for the Little Sisters of the Poor for nearly a decade now.
A street preacher armed with a speaker, a microphone, and a camera strapped to his chest is now banned from the village.
Our founding fathers believed in the separation of church and state, but not for one fleeting moment did they believe in the separation of God and government.
And powerful apologetics. Are you prepared to defend the faith?
I'm convinced unless we trust in God, this nation is finished.
We're facing a new kind of enemy. We're involved in a new kind of warfare, and we need the help of the Spirit of God.
3, 2, 1.
Welcome to another episode of Defending the Faith. I am Frank Harber, and I'll be your host, and I am the Chief Legal Counsel for the Institute for Christian Defense. You can find us online at defendingthefaith.law, and we defend the faith. We defend it in the theological arena. We defend it in the legal arena. We have several cases going on right now nationwide, and you have tuned into our show, Defending the Faith, where we talk about legal things, we talk about moral things, we talk about really all things Jesus, because if it has to do with the faith, then we talk about it. Now, we got a very special guest on the show today, and she is prolific. She speaks everywhere, and I've seen her schedule, and I've got a friend that does close to the same thing she does, Dennis Swanberg, Dr. Dennis Swanberg, and he is funny. So is she. But Dennis speaks all around the world. And, he speaks, about more than anybody I know. But this person speaks more than the Swan. I mean, she is booked. And after you hear this show, here's what you're going to want to do. You're going to want to hear her details, because you're going to want her to come and speak at your church. And she is in demand. She's going to tell us about her books at the end and all this kind of stuff. But Tammy Whitehurst, welcome to Defending the Faith.
I am so glad to be here, Frank. You and I go quite a ways back. Before we ever knew that this podcast was going to happen, I met you, my goodness, over 20 years ago.
At New Beginnings Baptist Church, right?
That's exactly right. You were quite the athlete, let me tell you.
That's the church where I'm famous for jumping up on the pulpit and preaching for about 10 minutes up there, which no one has ever done or done since. And you know what? I've never been invited back to.
I cannot believe that. That is, it's because things have just moved on, and that's a totally different church now. And it's,
I got invited back, but I haven't been since the new pastor is there, and I believe that's Pastor Todd, and he's the president of the Southern Baptist of Texas.
Yes,
so when I saw him the other day, February, I actually confessed to him that I'm the guy that did that. So, I don't know what my chances are of, getting to speak there again. But tell us what you do. Tell us about you.
Well, I'm Tammy Whitehurst, and I am a full-time speaker, like Frank said. And to be compared to Dennis Swanberg, let me just tell you, that makes me grin ear to ear, because I have heard him speak several times, and he makes me laugh so hard. As a matter of fact, I just heard him speak last fall, and as I watched my parents laughing hard at what he was saying, it blessed my fuzzy socks off. But I also want to say that I am the co-director of the Christian Communicators Conference, and I also run a daily blog on my ministry page, Tammy Whitehurst Speaker. But I'm so glad to be with you and to talk with you today.
So you have to write something every day. Is that right?
I do. But, it's just 350 words or less, but it goes on there every single day. And I've been doing that since 2009.
And you teach other people to do this. You have a conference. Tell us about that real quick.
Yes, the conference is the Christian Communicators Conference, and you can find it at christiancommunicators.com. What we are is we're a small conference that teaches speakers, those who have that call upon their life to speak or to write. And we really bring in a lot of very, very talented people in their field. And there's a lot of teaching, a lot of breakout sessions, a lot of one-on-one coaching. That's what I do whenever I'm not speaking somewhere, but I speak somewhere just about every week. And I'm extremely grateful for what the Lord has me doing, because I talk to so many people who can't stand their job. They wish they were doing something else. I absolutely love my work. And so I'm very grateful.
And you love Jesus. One of my mentors was a motivational speaker, and he was from Mississippi. He had a deep Mississippi accent. And when I was just a teenager, somebody handed me one of his cassette tapes. And I just thought, I didn't think much about it. And I just thought, I need to listen to this because the guy's name's so weird. His name was Zig Ziglar.
Oh.
And it was Zig Ziglar, and he talked like this, and man, I tell you what, I listened to that tape and I was just blown away. He was such a great speaker. I was like, wow, amazing. And then years later, I got a call one day and he said, Frank, this is Zig Ziglar, and I've been listening to your sermons, and, it just blessed me so much. And he talked to me about his faith, and really it was interesting because his faith was the backbone of what enabled him to be a motivational speaker and tell people how to be a success. And, I even saw him speak at the American Airlines arena with all these famous people and all this kind of stuff. But it was never lost on me that, that he told me his secret was, Jesus. And, it was the thing that really carried him to do what he did. Let's talk about you today, because you do help a lot of people be successful. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, is motivating for success. Let's talk about that. Go ahead and help us with this.
You were exactly right about Zig Ziglar. And I have read a lot of his stuff. I've read his one-liners, his quotes. He always motivates us to move forward. And that is what I love about people like him. I'll tell you another one. You like Zig Ziglar. This is gonna be not in the Zig Ziglar arena, but in the arena. I absolutely love Bill Gaither, and the reason I love him is because what he does is introduce the world to different singers, and God has used Bill Gaither. God used Zig Ziglar to use their platform to introduce people that God had touched with the call for singing, speaking, whatever it is. And I love that. I told my husband many years ago, I said, I just want to be the Bill Gaither of speakers. And so that's one of the reasons why I have a conference, and we collaborate and we don't compete. And there's a lot to that when it comes to motivation for success, let me tell you.
Yeah, competition's not a good thing. Zig Ziglar told me, and I think I told you this one time. I mean, he just preached it to me over and over. We'll edit that out. So Zig Ziglar told me, we'll pick up right here, guys. So Zig Ziglar told me, and I think I told you this, and he told this to me many times. So I know it's important. When a motivational speaker tells you something more than once, you should pay attention. But he said, Frank, he said, if you help enough people get what they want, he said, God's going to help you get what you want. You need to be a servant and just focus on helping people, and everything else is going to fall into place for you.
That is bullseye right there. If we help enough people, God helps us, and it all just works together. Everything I read in God's word talks about serving, not competing. And when we are serving, then it's just amazing what God can do with us, because when we have that servant's heart, not that competitor's heart. Now, I'm not talking about whether if we're playing horseshoes or cornhole or whatever, because we always get competitive in that arena, but I'm talking about in our careers. In Isaiah, God tells us no weapon formed against us shall prosper. He doesn't say the weapons won't form. And when it comes to motivation for success, we're going to have a whole lot of weapons that are going to form. And the enemy is going to throw every obstacle he can in our way to stop us from doing what God has called us to do. I have learned that the enemy roams around like a lion looking for someone to devour, and we don't have to feed him unless we really want to.
So what would you say if somebody's listening today and they're like, Tammy, I feel like I'm stuck. I think I was created to be more than I am, and I just doing the same old type of thing, and you probably have these people show up to see you speak. What do you tell that person?
A lot of times people will come up to me and they'll say, I wish I loved my job. I wish that I could do what you do. And what I will say to that is, what do you absolutely love? And then when they tell me what they love, I will tell them to pray so hard. Pray hard that God would move you in a different direction to do exactly what he created you to do. Because oftentimes people have a tendency, Frank, to stop way too soon. They throw their hands up, they thinking nothing's going to work. And so they just stop and they settle. And often when you ask somebody, when is the last time you did something for the first time? They can't even tell you because they get stuck in a rut. When we get stuck in a rut, we just waste time. All we're doing is just spinning our wheels and wasting time. And you and I both know that life is short. As a matter of fact, from diapers to dates to depends, it's a quick trip, let me tell you. And we want to do what the good Lord has created us to do. We don't want to waste away in a job doing something that we hate to get up and go to every single day. I think that God breathes into every person what he wants for them to do for him. And there's all kinds of jobs that we can have for him. But a lot of times I will look at people who have this conversation with me and I'll say this to them. Cemeteries are filled with speakers who never spoke, singers who never sung, authors who never wrote, teachers who never taught, dreams that were never accomplished, friends never made, and it could go on and on. But so many times the reason why people don't step out and do what God has given them the gift to be able to do is because of fear. And so I will look at them and I'll say, don't you die with buried treasure. Don't be one of those people in the cemetery that wishes they would have done this, that has every reason why they shoulda, they coulda, if they woulda. You step out on what I call two-footed faith, Frank. And there's a difference because one-footed faith, and I've been there and I've done that one-footed faith. That's when you step out and you say, God, I'm going to step out in faith and I'm going to do what you're telling me to do. I'm going to pursue that dream. And we step out on one-footed faith. And just in case Jesus don't come through, we keep plan B, C, D, E, F, G in our back pocket in that foot that's planted there. But what the Lord tells us to do, because if the impossible is possible with him, then we've got to step out on faith. We got to step in with what I call two-footed faith and say, I'm all in. I'm going to give it my best try. I'm all in. When I was telling you about the devotional that I have written, that blog on my Facebook ministry page, I've done that since 2009. I went back and looked, and in 2009, it would get shared 4 times, 5 times, but you keep doing it. We run the race with endurance. We go forward. We stay consistent. And now, it's just slowly increased. I wrote a blog on Saturday, and typically I write Monday through Friday, but because it was the Easter weekend, I wrote one on Saturday, and it was shared upwards toward 300 times. The thing is, most of the time, things don't happen overnight, and that's what I have to tell people. You have to pray, you have to prepare, and you have to plan, because God usually doesn't drop things in our lap and make it easy, but he does put them within our reach if we're just willing to step out on faith.
So where does it start on some of this? Does, people will get a dream in their head or get an idea and they'll probably more than not dismiss it. Like what you were saying, my mom told me when I was a little kid that the fastest horse that ever ran was never in the race. He was just in a pasture somewhere because someone didn't believe enough to enter him in the race. So where does this start with the small thing? How does this get off the ground?
Well, to me, when you look back at your life, look at as a speaker, I look back at my life and I look at the times when I was a little girl and I was holding a hairbrush and I was speaking and singing into a hairbrush. Or I can remember whenever when nobody was in the auditorium and I would step up on that stage just to see what it was like. That's before I even knew what I was going to do. So whatever it is that they wish they could be, if they look back and they can see where it started so long ago, because typically that's what happens. I remember in my late 20s, I told my husband, I said, I really want to speak at a conference. I really want to be a speaker. And at that time I was a teacher. That is just the training ground where God put me, because now I can look back and I can see this long trail of where it all began, from the holding the hairbrush and speaking in it to being a teacher. I taught middle school for almost 15 years. That was my first audience. And what God showed me in that audience was if I could keep their attention by making them giggle and grin and laugh about Texas history, they would learn what I had to teach them. And I'm going to tell you, it holds true even for adults. If you can grab their attention by making them laugh, then you got them. But you got to keep them. You know, boring is never anything that anybody wants to listen to. And you can lose an audience. What I say is you can lose your audience in the first 10 seconds to your telephone. Your cell phone is your biggest competitor. But when it comes to what you're saying about how do you get started, to me, the way you get started, Frank, is collaboration. You reach out to people who do what you do, know why you do it, and understand why you love it.
So if somebody is sitting here thinking they have a dream, so probably the first step is research who they need to be meeting and to start figuring out who are these collaborators that I've not met yet, right?
That's exactly right. If you find out, you research, you do a lot of praying, you do a lot of researching, and then you reach out to people. Almost everybody, you can find them on Facebook, or you can find them on the internet somewhere. Most people who are true collaborators, they're not untouchable. That you can reach out to them and they will answer you. They'll email you. They will answer an office phone. They will do that kind of thing. They'll talk to you, because if they have the gift of encouragement, they want to encourage you. One lady asked me one time, she said, she's a strong Christian woman. She said, Tammy, why in the world, whenever I decided to buy this conference, the Christian Communicators Conference, she said, why in the world would you train your competition? And I'll never forget, her next comment was, you're going to train yourself right out of a career, because you're training people to do what you do. And I said to her, I looked her in the eyes and I said, you know what? I said, that's not the way I look at it. The way I look at it is I'm building a team. And the bigger the team gets, the bigger the circle gets. We help each other. We recommend each other. We listen to each other. We help each other with material. There are several people who speak a lot along the lines of the way I speak. And so sometimes I'll do a Zoom call with them and we'll work up material. We'll share bits. A bit is what you put together to throw out at an audience, a one-liner, things like that. We'll share that kind of thing, because you know what, Frank? The world is big enough for as many people that are called to be inside that circle as we want it to be. But a lot of times what we do is we think that only we can do this. And if you think only you can do this, then you're going to be alone, and you're not going to have any collaboration. Your calendar is not going to be full because people aren't recommending you. And I know you probably are like me on this. I'm not going to recommend somebody if I haven't heard them speak, if I don't know them, if I can't look them up and find information about them out there, a website, something like that. So you have to get started. You have to get your feet wet. And it all begins by finding people who do what you do and love every single minute of what they do. And you just start there, and they'll give you all kinds of advice. Most of all, if you reach out to truly Christian people who love to collaborate, they're going to pray for you. They're going to listen to you.
I wonder, too, if they might rub off on you because, yeah. How important is attitude in what we're talking about?
Attitude, we've got to have an attitude of gratitude, is what I often say. I stay in all kinds of places whenever I'm invited to speak. I've stayed in all kinds of hotels, things like that. I've stayed in the ones that my husband and I could never afford, and I've stayed in the ones that we would never stay in, that you have to put a chair underneath the doorknob because you're like, ooh, somebody might be coming in here at night. However, whenever we keep that attitude of gratitude, that we're grateful for every place, every job, God will make sure that we're balanced. And when I say that, what I mean by that is this. I spoke at this place, Frank. It was a packed house. It was sold out. And there were just, it was a great booking. And they put me up in a very nice hotel. And the floor, whenever I got into the elevator, the floor wasn't even listed on there. You had to put your key in the spot to go up to this floor. I didn't even know that kind of floor existed. So whenever I put my key in there and I went up and I get off, and there's only one room on this floor, maybe two rooms on this whole entire floor. And I walk in the door, and this place is amazing. I mean, it's amazing. And I just went straight down to my knees with tears in my eyes. And I said, Lord, you think I'm worthy of staying in some place like this? Now, we can never get big-headed, though, because if we get big-headed, then we're going to topple over because we're going to lose our balance. Big-headed's always going to lose the balance. The very next weekend, I spoke at a rather large church that someone in their congregation owned a nursing home. I think you can tell where I'm going with this.
No, I know exactly where you're going. It happened to me once. Yes.
You're the only person I've ever heard that's happened to. Well,
it did.
Somebody had to die for us to get that room. Okay. So they put me up in a nursing home in an empty room that came up so that their church could save some money. Well, let me tell you, whether I'm staying at the top quality place, whether I'm staying in a nursing home, one, I'm going to get material from that, but two, I'm just grateful that God keeps me balanced, because the Lord giveth, the Lord can take away. And my husband said, are you going to stay there? I said, yes, I'm going to stay here. So I spent the night in that nursing home, and I heard a lot of coughing and gurgling in the night. There was so much metal in the bathroom that if I was even remotely thinking of falling in the bathtub, I could have grabbed hold and caught a bar in no time flat. If I had any magnets in me, I would still be hooked to the wall. There was so many bars in there. But I'm thankful. I'm grateful, because wherever God leads, I want to follow. And no matter where I stay or what I do, I can always draw some material from those experiences. So I'm thankful for the nursing home, but I'm thankful for that.
So, the Bible says that if you're faithful in the little, you'll be entrusted with the much. And it seems like that's a principle there, because people go, I want the much. I'm not so concerned about the little, but it seems to me there's a plan here. There might be a path.
That's good. That I have got to write down what you just said right there, because people want it to happen instantly, and it doesn't happen instantly. Just like you said, there's a path that leads to where you're going. And Frank, I think you would agree, we can never stop learning, because we're still traveling the path. I will travel the path till the day the Lord takes me home. But I always have to stay learning. I always have to collaborate, not compete. And the world's big enough for all of us in this. But, whenever we start competing against each other, what happens is we begin to competing leads to picking apart people. And I often will say that Satan's like a buzzard. He picks people apart one painful piece at a time until he's completely devoured us. We have to decide that we're not going to feed him. And competition, competing like that, that's what you do. You ultimately want to beat that person. You want to be better than that person. And when it's in a speaking career, when it's in a writing career, you really should celebrate that person because they're doing what God has called them to do. And in the process of celebrating them, they celebrate you, and the circle gets wider and wider. And, there's nothing the enemy would like more than to make you come crashing down on what you're supposed to do with your life, God's call upon your life. And, he would love for us all to be camouflage Christians where nobody can see us, nobody can hear us, nobody knows that we're there. It takes faith, it takes courage to step out and do what the Lord has called you to do. But it's totally possible. And the reason why I believe that is because God says the impossible is possible with him. I have seen speakers and writers who get on a track where they leave him out. And when it becomes all about me and less about him, that's totally opposite of what God's word says. Less of me and more of him. So every time I hit a stage, I want it to give God the glory. I had a group just last week that billed me as a comedian. Well, I use humor when I talk, but I do a lot of serious stuff in my talks too. So we want to make sure that it's just not all funny, that it's got the target, the bullseye, the win has always got to be Jesus. It's not that it comes back to Tammy Whitehurst. It's that it comes back to Jesus Christ. That's what it's got to circle back and come to.
Timing is, I think, a big part of this because I remember one time I was doing a stadium crusade. So I've done several, and I was doing a really big one. It was televised, and I had a young guy come up to me and he said, "Hey, I want to do what you do. I want to do stadium crusades. Tell me how to do this." And I said, "I think that's great." I said, when I started out, I looked to Billy Graham and I traveled with Dr. Graham for 10 years. And I said, so here's what I did. I said, I took the first little bitty church that would let me come. And I said, I did a good job. And they told 2 friends, and I got to do 2 more churches. And then I did a good job for them, and they told 2 friends. And I said, that's how I'm standing where you see me today. But then he said, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to speak at little. He said, I want to do the stadium crusades like what I see you doing now. And, it was a difficult conversation to get him to understand what I call the proper time. So the Bible says, humble yourself and in the sight of the Lord, and in the proper time, he will exalt you. And the incredible thing is, people, if they try to exalt themselves, they end up demoting themselves.
That's right.
But when God exalts you, people will say, I knew Tammy Whitehurst way back then, and I don't know how she became so famous and so successful. And of course, you'd probably agree and go, I don't either, except it was the Lord. But, part of this is you started somewhere and you trusted in God's timing. The proper time. Have you found that's true in your life?
That is so true, because I have had people that come up to me and say the same thing. They'll say, oh, I don't want to start there. It happened to you overnight. And I said, oh, no, it didn't. Things don't happen overnight. You start with a small audience, and that audience, somebody in there tells somebody else that tells somebody else, and word of mouth advertising is absolutely awesome. And I'm going to tell you, I've had agents before, Frank, and I remember the agent called me and she said to me, well, I tried to book you, but you were booked in some podunk place, and I could have booked you at a big place. And my exact words were, I want to go where God calls me, whether that is a small church, a medium church, whether that is a mega church, whether that is a retreat center. I just want to go where God calls me. But what they see a lot of times is they see you up on a stage when there is, my biggest audience has been 2,500. So they see you up on a stage and you've got all these people there and they're laughing. I mean, laughing at the very beginning and that kind of thing. And that's what people see that they want. But I remember when I first started, I actually organized my own event. I organized it. I invited a couple other speakers. I invited singers, and some people came, and then word of mouth started. But what I want to do more than anything, it doesn't have to be big arenas with lights and things like that. Now, I would love to be in an arena with thousands of people in it. But if God never puts me with an audience over 2,500, what I want the most is to follow where he leads. Because when I do it that way, there's just that peace that surpasses all understanding. And I'm not comparing myself to other people. I learn from other people. But I can't compare myself to other people. And what I've learned a whole lot in my life is sometimes it takes a long time for God to do something suddenly. And Mary DeMuth made that comment on whenever I had attended some training she was doing. And she said, sometimes it takes a long time for God to do something suddenly. That's the truth. You don't give up. You keep doing what you know in your heart God has called you to do. You don't give up. You don't give in. You give it all you have. And it doesn't matter. The great thing about God is he doesn't have age restrictions. If he calls you to do something, then it doesn't matter how old you are. He will continue to put that call upon your life until you say yes. I have sat with people who have died and gone on to heaven, and they have said, I always knew I should have fill in the blank, but they never did it. Maybe they were supposed to always write a book. Maybe they were supposed to, whatever it is, but they never answered that call. And one of the things that I'll tell an audience oftentimes, whether it's if I'm talking to speakers at a teaching kind of conference, or if I'm speaking at a church to an audience of a general audience, all kinds of people, I will say, imagine that you went into a room and it's a massive room full of beautifully wrapped gifts with big bows and they're shiny and glittery. And you walk in there with Jesus and you gasp and you look at him and you say, what is this? And he says, it's every gift my Father gave you that you never opened because you had more fear of doing it than faith in believing that he called you to do it. I know that each and every one of us was made for a purpose. My coffee cup today says fearfully and wonderfully made out of Psalms 139:14. We are fearfully and wonderfully made, and God did not blink whenever he created us. We are not forgotten. There is a reason we are to be here, and we just have to pray and reflect and be ready when he tells us what he wants us to do. But just like we were talking about earlier, it doesn't happen usually in a snap. It doesn't happen overnight. There's a lot of planning. There's a long path that led to it.
There's some scriptural truth that talks about not despising the day of small beginnings. Are you familiar with that?
Yes. The beginning. We have to have a beginning.
And so I've often thought that, And so I've often thought, well, maybe we shouldn't stop there and not only not despise it, but perhaps we should learn to fall in love with it, because it's the story of how God made us into you, to the Tammy Whitehurst that we see today. And, but too many times we're looking for the big ending. We don't want to think about the small beginning. But I think God loves the small beginning because he gets all the glory.
That's right. That's right. And one of the things people will tell me, Frank, is they'll say, well, when my kids are out of the house, I'm going to do that. Or, well, whenever I feel better, when I lose weight, I'm going to try and do this. Or there's all kinds of things that they'll say. When I get more money, I'm going to invest in this. Or, we can't wait till life's not hard anymore. We can't wait till life's not difficult anymore to do what God is calling us to do. And we can't wait for that perfect time, because in our world, there is no perfect time. But in his world, in God's world, he does have perfect timing. But we as human beings always think that we've got to be perfect. We've got to have every duck in a row. It just doesn't work like that. And another thing, perfection is not connection. I think a lot of speakers and writers and people who are in their God-given talent, they think they've got to be absolutely perfect. But if we're absolutely perfect, then how are we connecting with our audience? They've got to see that we're real people. One of the things that I never do, and I'm often offered a green room. Go in the green room before you speak and stay in there, and then you can come out and come on stage. And when you leave, exit the stage and go back to the green room. I think that if my audience is there, and that is the audience that God has put in front of me, then I don't hide out in a green room. I get out there and I talk to those people. I get behind my product table. I pray with people. I meet them. One of my favorite things to do, Frank, is whenever I go in, I don't ever put on a name tag, and I'm walking around and I'm talking to people at tables, and I'm filling their tea, or I'm taking their empty plate. I'm serving them. Well, sometimes somebody will look up and they'll say, "You're not supposed to do that. You're the speaker." I'm supposed to do that because God has made me a speaker, because I'm a Christian. I'm supposed to serve. I don't want to sit at that VIP table and never get out and go among the people that God has brought into that audience to hear what I have to say about him. I want to meet people. And not only that, I can get so much material from just walking around and talking. And whenever you mention Dennis Swanberg, he came to our church. I serve and worship at Woodland Hills Baptist Church in Longview. And he came to our church.
I love that church.
Oh, I love that church too. Charles Hunt, I tell you what.
I love that pastor, Charles Hunt.
Yes.
That's one of my favorite people in the whole world. I just have to jump in here. I love that guy.
Yes.
Longview, Texas. Oh, my goodness.
Yes.
Charles Hunt is of the Lord. Man, he's good.
He is. And whenever Dennis Swanberg came to our church and he was talking, he didn't hide out in a room. Dennis Swanberg was all over the place, meeting people, laughing with people. He was getting material from going around and visiting with them, and then he's throwing it out from the stage, and he's involving the audience that he got to know because God put them there for him so that he could show them him. So that is a big deal. I mean, we're not the big deal. Sometimes we think, oh, I'm a big deal. We're not a big deal. We're just being used by a big God to do something in a way that will lead people to Jesus.
Okay, so let's bring this home, because there are people that are listening to this that you absolutely can help them to be a successful writer, a successful author, a successful speaker. And you have this conference. Don't be shy, because let's tell people how they can get there. Because, I did some of this when I started. I've written a bunch of books, but I started out going to a Christian writers conference. I might have went to your conference. I don't remember whose it was, but tell us, that's where I started. I mean, and it grew, started small and a little bitty conference. So how do we get to this conference? Tell us what to do, how to find you.
Well, if they go to ChristianCommunicators.com, they'll see the conference. Now, we're a small conference where big things happen. We limit it to 50 people, and then we have a waiting list, because in small numbers, you can get to know people, relationships can be made, the circle can be broadened, we can collaborate. I mean, whenever you get to know people better, you're going to recommend them to be speakers if you're booked. You're going to help them. You're going to talk to them. You're going to teach them. We can learn so much whenever it's a smaller group. So ChristianCommunicators.com, small group where big things happen, and you get ready to meet your next group of friends who do what you do, understand why you do it, and most of all, have the call to do it. But I also want to say this. For that person who's struggling with, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I'm not sure. I'm too old now. I hear that a lot. I'm too old now. We have people that come to our conference. I think I don't ever say old people. I say older than they used to be. The older than we used to be, oldest woman who's ever been to our conference was 80 years old. And she was finally ready to do what God called her to do. That's why we do this. So don't doubt in the dark what God told you in the light. Don't doubt what he says. And then I'm going to flip that. Don't doubt in the light what God told you in the dark. Whatever God has called you to do, step out on faith and do it. And, you know, he tells us to lay down our lives and follow him. Many people, most of us can't even lay down our opinions and follow him. But when we do say, light my path, Lord, I'm following, I'm going. I'm going to mess up along the way. But Lord, I know you're going to teach me every day how to do it your way. And Frank, I want to say this. If they want to connect,
Tammy Whitehurst, how do we find you? How do we?
All right. If people want to connect with me, they can connect with me through TammyWhitehurst.com. They can email me through there. I also do coaching. I coach speakers and writers, because every speaker is a writer and every writer is a speaker. We're just one before the other. And I help people a lot with keynote presentations, things like that. So I'm available for coaching. I'm available to speak at your church. I'm available to make your group grin, giggle, and glorify the Lord. So you can contact me through TammyWhitehurst.com.
Well, Tammy, it has been an absolute joy to have you on the show. I hope everybody will check that out and follow these links, and hopefully, one of these things will apply to you. And we know that some people listening to this absolutely will change your life. Tammy, thanks for being with us, and we appreciate everybody tuning in. Be sure and share this episode with somebody that you know. It may not be for you, but it might be for somebody else that you know that's going to be the next C.S. Lewis, the next Dennis Swanberg, the next Tammy Whitehurst. God bless you, and we will see you in the next episode of Defending the Faith.